It was the winter of 1987, in a quiet village surrounded by thick forests and endless fog. At the edge of the village stood an old stone church called St. Mercy Chapel. The church was over 200 years old, and people believed strange things had happened there for generations. The priest of the church was Father Thomas, a kind but lonely man in his late 50s. He had served the village for nearly 20 years. Everyone trusted him because he was calm, wise, and never frightened easily. But one freezing night, something happened that would change his life forever. It began after midnight. Father Thomas was sitting alone in his small office, reading from an ancient Bible while rain hammered against the stained glass windows. The church was silent except for the ticking clock and distant thunder. Then he heard it, a faint voice. "Father, help me." He froze. At first, he thought it was the wind. The old church often made strange noises during storms. But then the voice came again, louder this time. "Please, let me out." The voice was coming from below the church. From the basement. Now, the church basement was a place nobody entered anymore. Years earlier, it had been sealed after part of the ceiling collapsed. Villagers whispered that the basement once held prisoners during a terrible epidemic long ago. Some claimed people had died there and their spirits never left. Father Thomas did not believe in ghost stories. Still, the voice sounded real. He grabbed an old lantern and slowly walked through the dark hallway toward the basement door. The wooden floor creaked beneath his feet. Thunder shook the church walls as he reached the end of the corridor. The basement door stood slightly open. That stopped him cold. He clearly remembered locking it earlier that evening. The voice whispered again, "Father." His hands trembled as he pushed the door open. The staircase descended into darkness. The smell of damp stone and mold filled the air. With every step downward, the temperature dropped. The lantern flickered violently. At the bottom of the stairs, he saw something disturbing. Footprints. Fresh footprints in the dust. Someone had been there. "Who's down here?" Father Thomas called. No answer. Only silence. Then suddenly, bang! A metal door slammed somewhere deeper in the basement. Father Thomas nearly dropped the lantern. His heart pounded as he followed the sound through narrow stone tunnels beneath the church. The walls were covered with strange faded markings he had never noticed before. And then he found the room. It was hidden behind an iron gate. Inside the room sat a wooden chair, chains hanging from the walls, and dozens of old crosses scattered across the floor. It looked less like a storage room, and more like a prison. The priest's breathing became heavy. Then he noticed something else. On the wall, scratched deeply into the stone, were the words, "Do not listen to the voice." Before he could react, the lantern suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Father Thomas heard breathing behind him. Slow, heavy. He turned around quickly, but saw nothing. Then the voice spoke again, now right beside his ear. "You came." The priest stumbled backward, whispering prayers under his breath. He relit the lantern with shaking hands. And when the flame returned, he saw a young woman standing at the far end of the room. Her skin was pale, her clothes torn and old-fashioned, her eyes completely black. "Please help me," she whispered. Father Thomas tried to speak, but fear trapped his voice. The woman pointed toward the chains on the wall. "He locked me here." "Who?" the priest finally asked. The woman slowly smiled. "You did." At that moment, Father Thomas felt dizzy. Strange memories flooded his mind, visions of another time, another life. He saw himself wearing priest robes centuries ago, standing in this same room while villagers accused a young woman of witchcraft. He saw fear, fire, chains, and the girl screaming as the basement door closed forever. "No," Father Thomas whispered. The woman stepped closer. "You promised to return." Suddenly the entire basement shook violently. The lantern burst again, plunging the room into darkness. The priest heard screams echoing through the tunnels, dozens of voices crying out at once. He ran, up the stairs, through the hallway, back into the church sanctuary. As he slammed the basement door shut, the voices instantly stopped. Silence returned. The storm outside had ended. Father Thomas spent the rest of the night praying in front of the altar, unable to understand what he had seen. The next morning, villagers found him sitting there pale and exhausted. He refused to explain what happened. But from that day forward, strange changes began. Every night at exactly midnight, the church bells rang by themselves. People claimed they could hear whispers beneath the floorboards during Sunday prayers. And Father Thomas, he never went near the basement again. A few months later, he disappeared without warning. The church remained abandoned for years. But even today, Locals say that if you stand near St. Mercy Chapel during a stormy night, you can still hear two voices coming from beneath the ground. A young woman whispering, "Let me out," and an old priest replying, "I'm sorry."